Who jumps out of perfectly good airplanes in the name of science? Mr. C.
Well, happy Aloha Friday, my friends, and a fun Friday it is. So, do you have a knock knock joke? I don't today. I've got so much to accomplish today. I'm not even going to have time to give you a quiz. Isn't that? I mean, I feel bad about it. I mean, I wanted to give you a quiz. All right, I'll give you a quiz if you insist, but not exactly a quiz. Well, we better get rolling because I am on a time bind. I'm really excited for several reasons. Number one, I got a really good article yesterday on the science behind the 3 major vaccines that are about ready to come out and be available first to the groups of people that really need it. You know, doctors, nurses, those who are on the front lines health-wise. It'll be available to them first, then first responders, you know, like police and firemen and paramedics and all of that, and they should be first. And then the categories of people that have more comorbidities, where they have more situations with their body or their immune system where they are more, I'll say, more vulnerable. Okay, Mr. C, would you be in that category? Maybe that last one you're talking about. I might be, yeah. So, but anyway, here's the point. It's scientific method. So all of the vaccines, that's the one variable not controlled, the independent variable. So that's the independent variable, and they're kind of different, the 3 vaccines. They're made a little bit differently. They have to be stored a little bit differently. So that truly is the independent variable. So I'm excited about that. And then I'm even more excited about this. Look at this. It's coming. See it? Is that cool or what? Jupiter and Saturn will align to create the first Christmas star in nearly 800 years. Now let me explain. You know, this is the great conjunction I've been telling you about for months. So, but this is the first time I saw that the last time there was this alignment. Now, I had read one astronomer who said about 400 years. This is an astronomer saying this. And he is a university professor astronomer. He says the last time the alignment of Jupiter and Saturn were this close was in 1226. So it'll be just 6 years shy of 800 years. Wow! I mean, how cool is that? So, to celebrate that, now you're going to have to do it all over again or I'm not going to pay off on this. Okay? It's the great conjunction. Conjoin means, con means with, join. So to join with something else. So Jupiter and Saturn are going to join with each other. Not quite, but almost. They're going to be so close, we'll see if it does what this article says. If they actually kind of make a star-like appearance. So I hope so. Now it's supposed to be December 21st, right? So the night of December 21st is the closest. Let's pray for a non-cloudy night. We're praying for lots of snow in the high country. Not those few nights. We're not. Okay? We're praying for clear nights, those nights. So we can get good looks at the GC, the Great Conjunction. I'm going to pay, but you've got to do it all over again. You've got to go out and look. You've got to show it to a parent. It's in the southwest sky now. Those 2 planets have migrated more to the southwest. So in the southwestern sky, maybe an hour after sunset. Okay? You should get a good look at them. I've looked recently. They're getting closer and closer. They've got a bit more closing on each other to do. So anyway, boy, is this fun. Is this exciting? This is why I teach science. Science is exciting. It's really fun. So anyway, I'm all fired up about it. So I'm going to pay 10 points. 10 points. And it's a little bit of a slightly early Christmas gift. 21st, 4 days away from Christmas. Okay? So I'm going to pay 10 points if you go out and look at it, point it out to a parent. That's the great conjunction. That's the closest alignment of Saturn and Jupiter in almost 800 years. Back in the Middle Ages. Wow. I'm thinking Chaucer, back in Chaucer's time. Maybe he was a literary guy writing in that time. It just popped in my head. So anyway, so have a look. Sheet of paper, turn it into the basket. You have next week, and that's about it. You just have next week. That's it, because I'm putting my grades in after that. So there won't be any time. If you get it in after that, I can't give you credit for it. Just next week. Okay? So I hope they're clear nights. They're supposed to be. So anyway, have at it. The great conjunction pointed out to a parent, and collect 10 points. Okay. So anyway, here are the questions I would have asked you if I gave you a quiz. Questions about the ark. Who designed it? God. Who built it? Noah. What was the length to width ratio? 6:1, 6 times longer than it was wide. What is the point about that ratio? It makes a boat that has that length to width ratio very stable, stable. Very stable, hard to flip. So big deal. Okay. Supposedly it was 5'10", 85, 51 feet. 510 feet long, 85 feet wide, almost a football field wide, and then, almost 1/3 of a football field wide. So, and 51 feet high, really tall, probably, what did I say, 17 foot decks, 17, 17, 17, or 16 and a half, 16 and a half. You've got to have, some room in there for the planking that makes the actual deck. So here's the deal. Why don't we exactly know what its height and its length and width were? Because we don't exactly know the length of and this is a good question, of a cubit. That was the length word that was being used during that time. Cubit. We don't know exactly what a cubit was, but we think it was about 1.7 feet per cubit. So why was the ark going to float? It wasn't going to sink because God designed it. Here's my little saying. I don't think I've used it. The ark was going to float because it was God's boat. That's why. God designed it. And he designed it to survive the flood. To keep Noah and his family safe and all the animals safe. It was God's boat, so it was going to float. So anyway, some animal questions. How would all the animals fit on the ark? Well, you didn't have to have all of them that were on the earth. Only 2 of each kind, male and female. So only 2 of each kind. The ark was huge, so God knew which animals were going to be on board, so he knew how big to build the ark. So you could have taken young ones on board, juveniles. They didn't need to be huge. So God just wanted the animal kinds on board, the major, as it says in Scripture, the family, major families. We think that word kind or families wasn't species, but it was bigger groups than that. So you've got kingdoms, and then you've got like families and genus and then species in the groups of animals. So we think it was one of the bigger groups above species. So anyway, hey, did you ever think about this? Why didn't Noah have to have, and his sons and his daughters-in-law have to have the pooper scoopers out all the time? You've got all these animals, weren't they pooping a lot? Mr. C, do you have to go there? So, pardon the pun, a little pun, some of you caught it. But anyway, Mr. C, that's weird when you laugh at your own dumb jokes. I know, yeah, probably so. But anyway, did you get it? Don't be going there. So anyway, here's the point. Look, they had to eat. They did have food on board, but would they have been eating 24/7? No, they would have been hibernating a lot. And if you don't, eat a lot, then you're not going a lot. And Noah and his family don't have to clean up a lot and then put up with the stink. So, and all of that. There was some of that, I'm quite sure. Okay, the flood today. Now I've got down here, look what I've got down there, right there. Miracles. There were miracles everywhere in this flood scenario and the ark scenario. Miracle and the animals scenario. There were miracles all over the place. We don't know all the things that God did. So why did he do them? He's God. And I love thinking about all that. Now the flood itself. Okay? The flood. So all the questions about the flood itself. So you're looking at your study guide on the flood. And some of these questions are going to be answered in a video that you're going to see here in about 10 or 11 minutes. I'm going to show you a video and I'll introduce it to you. But I'm going to do a little reading from Scripture, then we'll talk about the facts of the flood. This is Genesis 7. Now Noah was 600 years old. They lived a long, long time then. So, and you remember Methuselah, the oldest living human, lived 969 years. Why did they live so long then? We don't think before the flood there was the tremendous maybe radiation that we have now. Our atmosphere blocked some of it, but that might be one of the reasons they lived a lot longer. God had some other reasons too, so they lived a long, long time. So when Noah's 600, is he a really old person? No. He's got another, I think he lived another maybe close to 150 years after the flood, after he came off the boat. Maybe 200 more. And it says, Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him entered the ark because of the water of the flood. And God had said to them, after 7 more days, the day he told them to enter the ark and the animals, he said 7 more days. So they had like 7 days to get on board and help the animals get settled. After 7 more days, I will send rain on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. So it's going to rain for 40 days and 40 nights. The floodwaters are going to continue to rise after that. Probably there'll be some rising. The rain is cut off, and then the water kind of settles around the earth and evens out. Maybe rises a little bit. We'll talk about how high the floodwaters were in just a little bit. Okay, so Noah did all that according to all that the Lord had commanded him. Good thing. He better be doing what God's commanding him. So they entered the ark, and then the animals entered the ark by twos, male and female, as God had commanded Noah. And it came about after the 7 days that the water of the flood came upon the earth. Now, I want to read this verse. So it rained. And here's what it says in verse 11. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month, on the same day, God's precise in his timing. Precise timing. That's when the flood happens. And it says on the same day, all the fountains of the great deep burst open on that one day. They burst open all over the earth. So these fountains ripped up the continents and probably caused rapid continental drift and a number of other things that you'll see Dr. Walter Brown talk about. The rain fell upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and Then it goes on to say the water prevailed and increased greatly upon the earth, and the ark floated on the surface of the water. And the water prevailed more and more upon the earth, so that all the high mountains everywhere under the heavens were covered. So there are some people that argue, well, it really wasn't a worldwide global flood. Oh, really? It covered the highest mountains. I'm thinking worldwide flood. Well, God said he was going to flood the whole earth. It said the water prevailed 15 cubits higher. That's 25 feet higher than the highest peaks of the mountains. Now, the mountains may not have been as high then. Maybe 7, 8, 9, 10,000 feet high then. They were probably lifted up because of what the flood did to the earth and did to the surface of the earth. So, to the crust of the earth. You know, there's crust, mantle, and then the core. So the crust was greatly changed and affected by the flood. All the flesh that moved on the earth perished. I don't want to spend a lot of time there. Sad, sad, sad. And all that was on the dry land died. Remember, the ocean animals would have survived, especially those in the deep waters. So the water prevailed upon the earth 150 days. So how long is that 150 days? Would that be like 6 months, right? If you had a 30-day month on average. And then the water went down for another 6 months. It took that long. God caused a wind to evaporate the flood waters. And at the end of a year, they were almost ready to get out of the ark. And the earth was almost dried up at that time. So, Mr. Gilbert will help you answer any of the other questions in just a little bit after the video by Walt Brown. So anyway, it was a great global flood, GGF I call it, covered the highest mountains by 25 feet. Okay, these are the major questions I'm going to ask about the flood. Where did the flood waters come from? The fountains of the great deep, underground water that Walt Brown is going to talk about that was under tremendous pressure. Whenever the crust ripped open, that water gushed out. The fountains of the great deep burst open, and that water gushed out and sent a lot of sediment out with it, just ripped up the crust and caused sedimentation, burying the plants and animals, causing almost all of the fossils that were in the earth to ever be made. There might have been a few isolated random fossils in the crust layers before the flood, but most of them, 99.9% of them, were formed by the sediment layers that the flood caused. So anyway, and then it rained. It rained. The floodgates of heaven, it says, were open. Floodgates. So water gushed down from the atmosphere all over the earth. So, and just rapidly flooded the earth. It would have been quick. I'll just say that. I'll leave it at that. The water levels would have raised extremely rapidly. There would have been lots of waves that would have been very violent. Not pretty. Okay. It pays to obey God. So, and people decided not to. So, anyway, I want to tell you a little bit about Dr. Walter Brown, and then I want you to see the 10-minute video on the flood. Now, there's going to be a lot of science evidence that's mentioned that's coming up by Dr. Brown. You'll want to put that on the back of your FAA sheet. On the very back, you'll want to put science evidences. And you're going to make your list back there. I'm going to rattle off a few right now. You could jot them down really quickly. These are the biggies, the big science evidences there was a worldwide flood. All over the earth, there are, in many cases, thousands of feet of sedimentary rock. Sedimentary. Squeezed by the layers above. Sedimentary rock. Sediment layer after layer. Hundreds of feet thickness of sedimentary rock. Buried in those sedimentary layers, what do we find? Fossils of all kinds of plants and animals and humans. buried in the sedimentary rock. What do we call the leftovers of a plant or animal? Fossils. Those are the two big evidences for a worldwide flood. There's a lot more. I'm going to give you some of them in just a minute. Dr. Brown will give you a lot more. So all over the earth we find sedimentary layers of rock, fossils buried in the sediment all over the earth, under every continent. So rapid continental drift. Dr. Brown's theory, his hydroplate theory, hydro is water, plate the continents. His theory is that the flood broke up the earth into the plates, the continents, and they rapidly moved apart. So it's a great theory. It makes a lot of sense. So canyons all over the earth, caves over all of the earth that would have been dug out, that would have been ripped out underground as the floodwaters dissolved the softer material. So caves, leftover post-flood lakes like the Great Salt Lake up near Utah. Some of you have seen it up near Salt Lake. That's why it's named Salt Lake, Utah, because of the big Great Salt Lake. Perhaps, probably a leftover lake from the Great Flood. Canyons all over the earth, as I said. Additional evidence for a worldwide flood. There's about half a dozen right there. How many am I going to ask you on the test? I'd say 6 to 8. But add to your list of scientific evidences for a GGF that you're going to get from the video by Dr. Brown that's coming right up, that Mr. Gilbert's going to play for you, and then he'll talk to you a little bit about the additional scientific evidences. Dr. Brown is a mentor of mine. I've known him for 25 years probably. So, and he has had a creation ministry since he left teaching as a professor at the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, Colorado. He got his PhD from Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He's a brilliant, brilliant man, and God has used him to think deeply about the flood, the ark, and animals on the ark. And he's written a book about that thick on the flood, the ark, and the animals on the ark. He's been a personal friend and a mentor when it comes to all of the science involved with the flood, the ark, and animals on the ark. Add to your list on the back of your FAA sheet the additional evidences for a great global flood. I think you're going to enjoy this video, and then Mr. Gilbert will talk to you a little bit about it at the end. If you don't have that much time, I'll bring it up again on Monday. I am going to talk next week about the Christmas star. You think about what you think it was. What do you think the Christmas star was? Was it Jupiter and Saturn? Was it something else? Was it a comet? We'll talk about it next week, the Christmas star. Enjoy the video on the GGF, the Great Global Flood. Thank you, Mr. Gilbert.